Cymru, Wales, an ancient land where majestic mountains and dramatic coastlines intertwine with bustling cities. With a rich heritage and a vibrant culture embracing the spirit of the dragon.
The dragon on the Welsh flag goes way back, perhaps thousands of years.
It may be part of the United Kingdom, but it has its distinct culture, a distinct language, a distinct history.
Bound to the monarchy since the 13th century, the relationship between the royals and Wales has been tumultuous.
The relationship that connects English monarchy to Wales is a story of conquest. It's a story of imperialism.
Since the beginning, one member of the royal family is tasked with keeping the two connected.
King Charles loved being Prince of Wales. He was very proud of his Welsh connection.
Sometimes it's an uneasy peace.
The police and the army are saying very little about the bomb.
But both sides have made efforts to strengthen the bond between Crown and country.
It's a huge honour and privilege to have been asked to be part of the coronation.
I know that I speak for Catherine when I say that I've never in my life known somewhere as beautiful and as welcoming as Anglesey.
And at times, there has even been mutual affection. Leaving the two inextricably linked. This is Royal Wales. On the 8th of September 2022, Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II passed away. Her heir, Prince Charles, became king. But becoming sovereign also meant giving up a title he held for 64 years, Prince of Wales. During King Charles's first public address, he officially passed the title to his eldest son and heir, William.
Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty.
Today, this title, Prince of Wales, is ceremonial, highlighting the importance of the relationship between country and the monarchy. But its origin in the 14th century stems from subjugation.
Wales was an area whereby the monarchs had to maintain a royal presence to establish royal authority. And so the Prince of Wales was really important as a way of asserting English authority over Wales.
It's a symbolic statement that the Welsh have been conquered and that power now lies with the English crown.
The title came about after centuries of bitter fighting. Wales was an independent country until the turn of the 11th century. In 1066 came the Norman invasion under William the Conqueror. Landing at Hastings, he secured a resounding victory to take the English throne.
After the Battle of Hastings, William, like all good conquerors, was very keen to secure the borderlands of what he had conquered. So the Normans, they sweep across England. Norman lords go on to conquer, in the beginning, almost all of Wales.
But the Welsh fought back, hard.
Wales was a very difficult place to conquer. It was mountainous, and that made it difficult to both attack and to hold.
It would take another 200 years for the English to gain full control.
It's made up of several different kingdoms, and they fall gradually over time, culminating in 1282 with the final defeat of Llywelyn the Last.
Llywelyn's defeat came at the hands of the imposing Edward I of England.
And in 1284, he passes the Statute of Rhuddlan, which declares Wales a principality and a part of his kingdom.
To keep his newly subjugated people in check, Edward ruled harshly.
It's a series of laws that are passed which deny the Welsh people basic civil rights within their own country. They were controlling where Welsh people could live and trade, and by doing so, they were putting economic power in the hands of the English.
To further underline English domination over the Welsh and help quell rebellions, Edward I went on a castle-building spree.
They built their castles as strongholds, very often high up, overlooking estuaries, overlooking wide valleys.
These are statements of power. They told the Welsh that they were a conquered people. Yes, they're military installations as well, but I think the symbolism of them is really important. Look at the power of the crown, look at the power of royalty.
Edward would initiate the building of no less than 17 castles over a 47-year period. They were concentrated in the most rebellious region, North Wales. The most impressive examples still stand today. Although no longer in royal ownership, they remain significant to the monarchy, and none more so than the imposing Caernarfon on the banks of the River Saont.
Caernarfon Castle in many ways is the architectural masterpiece of Edward I. It's inspired by the walls of Constantinople. Edward I had been a crusader, he'd been to Constantinople, and by modelling Caernarfon on that, he's drawing a link between his Christian project, if you like, a defender of the Christian faith, and what he's doing here in Wales.
Constructed around 1284, it became the administrative centre of North Wales. Caernarfon was also the birthplace, literally, of an idea that would link the royals with Wales to this day. In a slightly cynical bid to pacify anti-English sentiments, King Edward is said to have promised Wales its own prince. Welsh-born and speaking not a word of English.
His son, the future Edward II, had been born at Caernarfon Castle in 1301. And since Edward could not speak English, well, as a baby he couldn't speak any language, he was declared the Prince of Wales. And this is the beginning of the fact that the oldest son of the reigning monarch is the Prince of Wales.
But rebellions in Wales would continue to flare up for another 100 years. And since then, those that held the title haven't always done their part to improve the relationship. In the 16th century, not a single Prince of Wales so much as set foot in the country, even though the reigning monarchs at the time, the Tudors, had strong Welsh roots.
The Tudors are very much part of Welsh history because the man we know as King Henry VII is Henry Tudor, Harri Tudur. The Tudors, the Tuduriaid, as we say, are descended from King Cadwaladr. They are an old Welsh royal line.
Henry Tudor is born in Pembroke Castle in southwest Wales. At the time, no one's imagining he's going to sit on the English throne one day.
Henry's ascension to the throne was the culmination of a fierce civil war that had raged since 1455, known as the War of the Roses.
The War of the Roses was an ongoing war between two great royal houses, the House of Lancaster and the House of York. The Red Roses, the White Roses, opposing one another. What they managed to do is essentially wipe one another out through years of fighting, and a smaller royal house managed to sort of rise to the top and take the throne, and that was the House of Tudor.
In 1485, Henry Tudor, aligned to the Lancastrians, decided to raise an army and make a bid for the throne. For his banner, he used the Red Dragon of Cadwaladr, a military symbol used by Welsh kings since the 5th century. He placed it on a background of green and white, the Tudor colours, creating the modern Welsh flag.
And he uses his Welsh heritage as a way to recruit manpower, to build an army. And what he's promising to do is to give the Welsh back their dignity.
With an army of nearly 6,000 men, Henry Tudor defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth on the 22nd of August, 1485. His crowning as King Henry VII, marking the start of the Tudor dynasty.
And from that moment onwards, there is a very close relationship between Wales and the English crown.
A relationship that, despite tests, has remained intact for more than 500 years and continues to this day. The relationship between Wales and the monarchy remained volatile across the centuries. Sometimes strained, sometimes strong. Some monarchs the Welsh even claimed as their own, from Henry Tudor, who used his Welsh roots to capture the throne, to Queen Victoria.
It's in the Welsh language literature, extolling her as of the blood of the Tudors. The blood of the Tudors runs through your veins. So they're claiming Victoria for themselves.
By the 19th century, many in Wales felt great loyalty to their monarch and the British unity Victoria represented, despite her playing hard to get.
Victoria only spent about 7 weeks of her whole life in Wales, most of it when she wasn't even queen yet. As Princess Victoria, she visited North Wales. She stayed on Anglesey in 1832. And from then on, the Welsh are in love with their young queen. There are so many poems to her. Every time a child is born, they send her presents.
She returned twice as sovereign, staying in Penrhyn Castle in 1859 and Pale Hall in the Dee Valley 30 years later. And she started a tradition that continues to this day, bringing a bit of Wales to royal celebrations.
Every time there is a jubilee, Welsh choirs travel to London to perform for their queen.
Welsh choirs would continue the tradition of singing for monarchs, like for the late Queen Elizabeth II, in celebration of her coronation in 1953. After all, nothing quite says the land of my fathers like a Welsh choir. But along with choirs, Queen Victoria was serenaded by another iconic Welsh sound, the harp. Harps have been linked to Wales for nearly 1,000 years. According to a 12th century Welsh manuscript, every gentleman should have a cushion on his chair, a virtuous wife, and a well-tuned harp.
We've got the Welsh traditional harp, which is a triple-strung harp, so it's quite different, where it's got 3 rows of strings. You've got 2 rows of strings on the outside and then a row in between, and you've got to stick your finger in. And it's used for all sorts of Welsh traditional music. It's got intricate links with the language, history, and all of this happening over centuries and centuries of tradition.
It is a history reflected in royal courts, with many monarchs having personal Welsh harpists.
The war harpist was a position that was first introduced in the 12th century and then died out, I think, in the 19th century.
The last royal harpist was John Thomas. He was royal harpist to Queen Victoria. So then we had no royal harpist until the year 2000, when the role was revived.
It was seen as an important link between Welsh culture and the crown.
I think a lot of monarchy is about symbols and gestures are very important at keeping people together. So having a harpist is great, and it sounds wonderful. I mean, it's just a very distinctive sound. You think Wales.
Every royal harpist but one has been Welsh. The latest to hold the role is Alice Hughes. She played during the coronation of King Charles III.
Obviously, it's a huge honour and privilege to have been asked to be part of the coronation. It's a big part of history and definitely memorable time for the whole country.
And Alice didn't play just any harp. Since 2006, there is an official royal harp.
So the royal harp is the one that I play when I'm on duty for the royal family. It's one-of-a-kind instruments with all kinds of Welsh emblems all over it. On one side, we've got some daffodils, got a crown, got the Prince of Wales feathers, got some red dragons.
But playing any harp, let alone the royal harp while the world watches, is no easy feat.
A lot of people don't realise that the harp actually has 7 pedals to keep track of. A teacher of mine once said, playing the harp is like being a swan. You have to glide on the surface, but your feet are terribly busy underneath. If I press my C pedal down here, can you see these discs move? They go from the pedal, through the pedal box, up through the column, and into this very, very intricate mechanism, which controls the discs, which raises the pitch by a semitone.
But it's not just pedals Alice has to keep track of.
This harp has got 47 strings, which is a full-sized concert harp.
With so many strings, there's a danger of going adrift mid-performance.
So I often get asked, what on earth do these colours mean? And it's quite simply so that us harpists don't get lost. So we've got our C strings, which are all red, and our F strings, which are all black. And it's simply so that we know our way around the instrument and we've got a focal point to help us not get lost in all 47 strings.
When Alice plays for the royals, she actually performs with 2 harps.
I play with a royal brooch to signify that I'm on duty, and those duties can be of anything between, playing for some international guests in somewhere like Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle. It's all encompassing, and it very much depends on what's on in the royal calendar and what events they have coming up.
Re-establishing a royal harpist is only one way the royal family have recently tried to demonstrate their connection to Wales. Perhaps the grandest gesture was the investiture of the Prince of Wales in July 1911.
There's a ceremony held at Caernarfon Castle to make the future Edward VIII Prince of Wales, to crown him, essentially. And this hadn't happened in public before. The investitures before that had really been kind of private ceremony.
The British Chancellor David Lloyd George, himself a prominent Welsh statesman, persuaded Edward's father, King George V, that a large royal event in Wales would be a boost for the country and good for public relations.
This is meant to be a kind of a public celebration, a reminder to the Welsh that they are a united people, but also a British people. And that is held at Caernarfon Castle, and there's a symbolism there because that is where the first English Prince of Wales was born.
A grand ceremony full of pomp was staged.
And it took the form of an elaborate, almost Tudor-like pageant with the prince in satin breeches and a purple surcoat. It was meant to sort of draw on this idea of an eternal history that connects Wales and England, except it was a bit of a farce, it was a bit of a pantomime. Nevertheless, the young Edward speaks some Welsh as part of the ceremony. He plays his part. He is invested as Prince of Wales and becomes, if you like, the symbolic connection that cements the union between the British monarchy and the Welsh nation.
The 1911 investiture does seem to have been very well received at the time because it fitted in with kind of the way national identity worked in 1911 within Wales. The vast majority of people were deeply proud of being Welsh and British.
Edward became king 25 years later in 1936, but abdicated the same year, leading to his brother being crowned George VI. This was the moment that Princess Elizabeth became heir to the British throne. An heir who, from a young age, was keen to ensure a strong bond with Wales.
But one thing you've got to do is you've got to show an interest in Welsh culture. So actually, one of Elizabeth's first engagements as Princess Elizabeth was that she went to the Eisteddfod. So that was one of her very first solo engagements.
This important, centuries-old poetry and music festival is an annual cultural event in Wales. It showcases storytelling bards and musical minstrels, with the Welsh language playing an integral part. During her first visit in 1946, the 20-year-old Elizabeth was invested as an honorary bard. She was given the title Elizabeth the Windsor, as a gesture of homage to a young royal who had come to honour Welsh culture. Six years later, she was Queen, and one of her first official engagements was in Wales.
It is a real pleasure to have an opportunity so early in my reign of visiting such a beautiful part of the Principality.
And she returned to the Eisteddfod in 1953, becoming the first reigning monarch to visit the festival. But despite Elizabeth's royal visits, nationalist voices in Wales began growing louder.
Welsh nationality is becoming more political in the 1950s and the 1960s. People after the Second World War are starting to question what Wales's relationship is within the United Kingdom.
The empire really is starting to crumble all over the world. We have civil rights movements developing, whether that is the USA or France or Wales.
And in the midst of this political upheaval, a national tragedy. Since the 19th century, mining was integral to shaping Welsh economics, culture, politics, and society. The honest hard work was a source of pride for the people of Wales. But on the 21st of October 1966, disaster struck in the heart of the Welsh valleys.
Aberfan was a desperate mining accident, an incredibly powerful, poignant, devastating story for Wales and for the local community.
After 3 weeks of heavy rain, a huge mound of mining spoils at the edge of the village of Aberfan collapsed.
A coal slag heap rushed onto Pantglas Primary School in Aberfan.
All I can say is that most of my Sunday school are under that rubble. The Sunday school of about 50. So almost 40 of my children are under there.
This happened at exactly 9:13, and we know that because the school clock stopped at exactly that time.
There was a desperate rescue effort, with villagers and emergency services working through the night. But 116 children and 28 adults lost their lives. That morning, Prince Philip came to offer support. But Queen Elizabeth did not visit until 8 days after the tragedy unfolded.
And at the time, the Queen, I think, was criticised for not immediately attending Aberfan.
When she did, she was visibly upset speaking to the bereaved.
She talked to the people as a mother would talk to other mothers, because then she was a mother, and I suspect she could feel very well that unspeakable tragedy, what the people were feeling.
When she went, you could see that it meant an enormous amount to her, that was deeply moving to her.
It was one of the few occasions the late Queen shed a tear in public.
Her personal reaction to that tragedy and the way she seemed to care about those mothers would have gained her the respect and the goodwill of many Welsh people.
The Queen would later voice regret that she had not gone sooner, even though she had her reasons to delay her visit.
I'm a firm believer that she chose to go at the right time, because it was a time when the search had come to an end, when there was an acceptance, a reluctant acceptance of what had happened.
The Queen would later return to Aberfan a further 3 times to pay her respects. And years later, the tragedy is still firmly in the minds of the royals.
This time it was Prince Charles who joined the community for this anniversary, planting a tree at the memorial garden where the school once stood.
Aberfan showed the world the darkest sorrow, but also the most shining selflessness.
The Aberfan disaster happened in a period of increasing Welsh nationalism, driven by a feeling that Welsh culture and Welsh interests were being ignored by the British state. It had the government worried.
And the British government literally starts badgering Buckingham Palace, saying, let's make Charles Prince of Wales, let's essentially crown him, just as happened in 1911. The palace are reluctant to do this. At first, Charles is a young man, they don't want kind of the public attention on him, but the government are persistent.
The palace agreed, and the date was set for the 1st of July 1969. But there were concerns. Would a lavish ceremony at Caernarfon Castle simply play to the nationalists' cause? Especially as it was merely symbolic. Charles had already been Prince of Wales since he was 9, 11 years earlier.
In some sense, it was a gamble that the British monarchy decided to lean into this and really go full guns with the investiture.
In preparation, Prince Charles was plucked from his studies in Cambridge and moved to Aberystwyth University for a term.
He had gone to Wales in the months before to learn Welsh, to establish a relationship, a stronger relationship with Wales, to spend time there.
At the main college building on the seafront, Prince Charles has done most of his work. In the language laboratory, he's spent an hour each day perfecting his Welsh grammar and pronunciation.
The Welsh language is an integral part of British history. There was a time when it was spoken across the island of Britain.
But it is a completely different language to English.
Pronunciation is different, the syntax is different. In English, you'd say big man, but in Welsh, you'd say dyn fawr, which would literally translate as man big. Welsh even has a different alphabet to English. Double L is a single letter within the Welsh alphabet, pronounced which isn't a sound you have in English. Essentially, you put your tongue on the top of your mouth and you blow. And a lot of Welsh, I think, is about enunciation. It's about emphasising letters. So if you think of the name Caernarfon, what's important there is you pronounce every letter. And once you've mastered that, it comes very naturally.
Learning an entirely new language in just a few weeks, Charles did surprisingly well. Even his Welsh language teacher, Professor Edward Millward, agreed.
In the short time that he's been working, he's developed a very good accent, and I'm sure it's going to stand him in very good stead from now on.
But despite Charles's best efforts, the planned ceremony was seen as an insult by some.
There were many dissenting voices about this lavish investiture for the Prince of Wales. He's spoken since about how every day when he was doing these Welsh courses, he would come out and he would see people protesting against him. So he was very aware, I think, that not everyone was happy about him having this title.
In the build-up to the event, security services across Wales were on high alert.
Police have been meeting for their final briefings throughout the day.
And there were actually acts of terrorism which people have forgotten, that there were threats.
The bomb was found behind this plaque here, which commemorates the first visit to Wales by Prince Charles after he was created Prince of Wales.
As the 1st of July drew nearer, more bombs were planted. One near the train tracks Prince Charles would use.
Led by a group called Mudiad Amddiffyn Cymru, the Movement for the Defence of Wales. And they planted 4 bombs which were meant to go off on the day of the investiture. One of them explodes prematurely.
No one will ever know quite what happened here at midnight last night, only that 2 men blew themselves up with their own bomb.
But despite the opposition and threat of attack, the investiture went ahead as planned. And it passed without incident. Just like the investiture of his great-uncle in 1911, it was a grand affair. But Charles had a global audience.
It was televised, 500 million people around the world watched it. It's a huge, lavish ceremony with all of the kind of trappings of the insignia, the symbols of the position.
Charles at his investiture is presented with what's called the honours of the Principality of Wales. These are royal regalia, things like a sword, a rod, a ring.
These items, made with Welsh gold, had been created for the investiture of Edward in 1911. But ahead of Charles's ceremony, it was discovered that one of the pieces was missing.
The coronet used in 1911, the royal family couldn't get hold of because Edward VIII had abdicated, he hadn't died, and when he'd moved to France, he'd taken his coronet with him. So they had to make a new one.
So, with his modernist 1960s coronet, Charles was crowned to the cheers of the well-wishers. And, most likely, a sigh of relief from his mother.
We tend to remember it as the rather romantic images of the sort of, the red-faced young prince looking slightly shy, being crowned by his mother with that circlet of Welsh gold. And it goes down as a rather lovely event. But it was an event not without jeopardy. And the Queen, after the investiture, cancelled all engagements for a week. She had a bit of a breakdown.
Luck to the Prince of Wales and all the rest of us.
To cement the royals' commitment to his new role, Charles wasted little time, going on a tour of Wales following his grand investiture. The country embraced its newly crowned prince.
In a way, it was a bit like a famous film star coming. You were going to see somebody who was famous that you'd only seen on the big screen before.
Thousands came out to greet him across the 4 days. But this was nothing compared to the crowds a decade later who had come to see him and his princess. Charles's first tour of Wales in 1969 was a resounding success. And with his studies complete, royal duty called. He spent the 1970s being shipped across the globe on royal tours, from New Zealand to America. He even witnessed the Bahamas gain independence while on duty in the Royal Navy. Despite his busy schedule, he still made a point of regularly coming back to visit Wales. But it was his tour of Wales in October 1981 that really brought out the crowds. This time, he wasn't on his own.
Shotton Station, and Wales was so excited it couldn't quite decide whether to salute or shake hands first. Prince and Princess lost no time in diving into earnest conversation with school children, waving homemade flags of Welsh dragons and Union Jacks.
3 months after her wedding to Prince Charles, this was the first royal tour for Diana, the new Princess of Wales. She was an instant success.
She was far more down to earth and she seemed to really connect with people. And that was a real stark contrast to the rest of the royal family, who were in many ways rather aloof. When she visited Wales, there were cheering crowds.
Everywhere she's gone, There have been wonderful crowds, the children especially. They've been handing her flowers and presents.
Now, interestingly enough, there hadn't been a Princess of Wales since 1910, in fact, because Edward VII, when he was Prince of Wales, was famously not married. So it was a new idea, Princess of Wales, so it helped that Diana was immensely glamorous.
During the tour, Prince Charles took Diana back to Caernarfon Castle, where he had been invested 12 years earlier, under slightly more hostile circumstances.
Well, Prince Charles had the state trumpeters and the mass bands, and he was invested. But this is how you invest a Princess of Wales. And in many, many ways, it's a much happier occasion.
The 3-day tour ended in Cardiff, with Princess Diana giving her first speech in public.
I'd like to just add how proud I am to be Princess of such a wonderful place, and the Welsh people who are very special to me. Thank you.
She was Princess of Wales, so it really was the ultimate kind of brand. It did amazing things to enhance Charles's position in Wales.
I think that helped solidify the popularity of the royal family with a new generation. Those tours that Diana did and the sense of connection that she made.
She and Charles returned to Wales throughout the 1980s. The visits offered a temporary distraction for a country facing economic hardship and high unemployment.
At Wrexham, they started a tour of a thoroughly depressed area where the old heavy industries have failed. So today it was the job of the Prince and Princess of Wales to do a little to cheer up the people of Wrexham and the county of Clwyd.
Even during the 1990s and the messy separation of the couple, Diana was eager to keep her connection to the Welsh people and retained her title Princess of Wales after her divorce. Then, on the 31st of August, 1997, tragedy. Wales lost its princess. Along with the rest of Britain, the people of Wales grieved.
I was surprised about the outcry, the strength of emotion I felt in Wales. Every supermarket had condolence books where people queued up to put their names, and this is in Welsh-speaking mid-Wales.
At the funeral, her coffin was carried by a regiment that has served the royal family for over 100 years.
She was the mother of the future king, and therefore that's why she was afforded the pallbearers and escort from the Welsh Guards.
It was a fitting tribute to the Princess of Wales. These iconic soldiers are part of the Household Division, made up of the Grenadier Guards, Coldstream Guards, Scots Guards, Irish Guards, and of course, the Welsh Guards. These 5 regiments are responsible for guarding the monarch in their distinctive red tunics and bearskin. The Welsh Guard Regiment was created in 1915.
The then King, King George V, wanted all elements of British Isles within the Household Division, so he introduced the Welsh Guards so that they then had England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales represented in the Foot Guards.
But don't be fooled by the attire of these impeccably dressed defenders.
At the end of the day, they might look very pretty in their bearskins and scarlet tunics, but they are fighting soldiers, and that's what they're trained to do.
Being truly Welsh, with 91% of guards being from Wales, there is one date on their calendar that stands out above the rest. The 1st of March, St. David's Day, in honour of Wales's patron saint.
1st of March of every year is celebrated by the battalion. It allows family and friends to come in. It allows all of the veterans of the regiment to come in. And if we are honoured, we would have a member of the royal household, for instance, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales would come and take the salute.
Both the Sovereign and the Prince of Wales hold honorary colonel titles in the Welsh Guards, cementing a close bond with the unit.
I drink to the health of the Welsh Guards, of Welsh Guardsmen past and present, and of all your families.
Part of the celebration sees the royals hand out leeks.
Every member gets a leek, and it's a small leek, a material-made leek, so that they can wear that on their uniform.
A symbolic gesture steeped in Welsh legend. It is told that in the 6th century, St. David advised Welsh warriors to wear a leek during a battle with the Saxons, so enemies and allies could be distinguished. In 2007, Charles travelled to Bosnia, where the Welsh Guards were stationed, to maintain the tradition. Today, it is the new Prince of Wales, William, who continues this cherished link with the Welsh Guards.
I'm sorry that my father couldn't be with us here today to say farewell, but I know he would talk of his fierce pride and admiration for you all, and of his own sadness to be moving on from an appointment he held so dear since 1975.
It is also up to William to nurture the bond between the royal family and Wales, something he began in 2010 when he was posted as a search and rescue pilot at RAF Valley on Anglesey, North Wales.
That was very important to him because he'd spoken a little bit about wanting to maybe do what Harry did and go on the front line, but that was never really possible. So for him to be able to be in a role where he felt that he wasn't being mollycoddled, where he felt that he was actually going out and fulfilling a function and a job, and it wasn't being modified because of his position, I think was very important. And he definitely got that with search and rescue. I think there was some quite dramatic rescues that he was involved in, and he really felt like he was playing his part.
Only a year after being posted on Anglesey, William and Kate tied the knot.
William and Kate made Anglesey their first marital home. They really liked this idea of being able to have a retreat away from the spotlight.
But it was an idyllic time for them as a married couple to actually get to know each other and to live together as husband and wife.
While William continued to fly search and rescue, they rented a 4-bedroom house on Bodorgan Home Farm. The perfect location to start a family.
And it was George's first home as well. They went back up there when they had Prince George and spent time there.
It was a place where they were well looked after.
The people of Anglesey, by all accounts, were very protective of them. They felt very relaxed there. They felt they could go out and about and that people would leave them alone.
I know that I speak for Catherine when I say that I've never in my life known somewhere as beautiful and as welcoming as Anglesey. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for making my wife and me so welcome when we arrived here.
After his RAF service ended in 2013, William and his young family moved to London. But, courtesy of his father, the royals still had a little Welsh getaway. Little by royal standards.
King Charles purchased the holiday home in Wales for £1.2 million.
Nestled in the foothills of Bannau Brycheiniog, also known as the Brecon Beacons, it is a spectacular 192-acre estate. Bought in 2007, the property needed a lot of work.
Charles loves, restoring and rebuilding old things. That's been something that's been very, very important to him, the heritage-led regeneration.
It was part of Prince Charles's efforts to forge stronger bonds with the country alongside his annual trips.
I don't know historically if a Prince of Wales ever put in as much as what he did. I think it was a very sensible move to have a house in Wales where he could have a Welsh week, so he'd go there for a week and he would conduct business there.
When Charles became king, he handed the house on to his successor, William. But not everyone is happy about a new Prince of Wales. 1 in 3 Welsh people believe the title should be abolished.
A lot has changed since 1301. We've had the creation of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, but for many people that title is still symbolic of oppression, of English dominance over Wales, and that's why it does continue to attract controversy today. There's been protests, there's been petitions against the title.
But the royals have also learned from the past, eager to avoid previous missteps. William has already indicated he will not continue the tradition of investiture. And some of the Welsh nationalists' grievances that strained the relationship with the royals are gone. Devolution saw Wales get its own parliament, and the late Queen herself opened the first National Assembly in 1999. In 2011, Welsh was finally recognised as an official language of Wales. Thankfully for the royals, the polls indicate that the majority of Wales still wants their monarchy, with the Prince and Princess of Wales scoring high.
William and Catherine remain hugely popular, and polls are always very near the top as the most popular royal.
I think you very much got the sense that there was a huge amount of excitement. This was the beginning of a new, very exciting chapter.
This new generation of royals must forge their own connection with Wales, allowing this centuries-old relationship to continue and to flourish into an affectionate alliance, a royal Wales.
The inner workings of a company that really makes the biscuit. From the boardroom to the factory floor, head inside McVitie's tomorrow from 6:40. Then as soon as that's done, we're welcoming a new influx of bakers. The Great Celebrity Bake Off as Stand Up to Cancer returns from 20 to 8. Stick with us tonight. We're building boards to catch some waves next. Devon and Cornwall coming up.